Welcome, my friends, to a new episode of CELTA Insider. And in this episode, we're going to talk about Assignment 4 on the CELTA course. So let's start, my friends. Let's go. Now, let's just start by an intro to Assignment 4. And let's read that intro together and talk about it. So, the intro says, for this assignment, you need to consider all the classes you have observed, those by experienced ELT professionals, those on video, and those of your colleagues in teaching practice, and all the classes you have given during the course. So we're talking here about those classes by experienced ELT professionals. So you as a CELTA trainee might ask, Shadi, what do you mean exactly by this? Let me remind you. During the CELTA course, you have actually observed maybe your tutors delivering a demo lesson to you. Your tutors are ELT professionals. And of course, when you were watching them, you took notes of what they were doing. Now you need to use these notes in this assignment. Also remember, maybe you're doing your CELTA at a university or at a language center and you attended to other teachers teaching at the university, and those teachers have a level 5 certificate in English language teaching. When I say a level 5 certificate, like CELTA from Cambridge Assessment English, Cert TESOL from Trinity College London, a TEFL course from London Teacher Training College, these certificates are at level 5. So again, those are ELT professionals. Those people who hold such certificates are ELT professionals. And of course, when you observed the lessons, you took some notes. These notes will be used on this assignment as well. Right now, another point. Those on video, because usually in CELTA, you observe also professionals in teaching videos. Like, for example, you have this video of a teacher teaching speaking to adults or reading or whatever. And of course, you take notes on these videos. These notes will be used in this assignment as well. Right. Now, those of your colleagues in teaching practice, because your friends on the course, your peers, will be teaching as well. And you will be sitting back there and taking notes on what they do, whether, you like it or not, you would change it or not. All these comments also can be used on this assignment. And finally, all the classes you have given yourself during the course. And of course, on CELTA, you have to teach 8 times, right? And these 8 times would lead to 6 hours. Most CELTA courses are designed this way. Not all of them, but most of them. You teach 8 times so that you can get the 6 hours. So now, let's go to the preparation part. And let's read about this part here. And it says, use the notes you took while observing lessons. Those of your peers in teaching practice, those given by experienced ELT professionals, and those on video. Okay, wonderful. You should also review your feedback sheets and tutorial notes. You should make direct and a specific reference to these within the body of your assignment. So number 1, we need notes. You need to understand that. And these notes will be taken from your observation. Either you observe a video, professionals, your peers, it doesn't matter. And you will also use the feedback sheets given to you. And of course, during the CELTA course, you'll be given a feedback sheet on every TP, teaching practice. And by the time you come to this assignment, at least you've got 6 feedback sheets or 5 feedback sheets. So you can use these, right? Then, tutorial notes. Usually there are 3 tutorials on a CELTA course. The first tutorial happens after TP1 and TP2. The second tutorials happens at the middle of the course, after you finish 4 teaching practice lessons. And then the third tutorial is not a must. It can be given to some people. Now someone might say, based on what, Shadi? I say, well, imagine this. Your CELTA tutors feel that you're in danger of failing the course for any reason. Then they will give you tutorial 3 to make you aware of what you need to work on so that you pass the course safely. Or maybe you were not doing very well at the very beginning of the course, but then your tutors noticed that you progressed a lot. And they want to tell you that and tell you that there is a possibility of a higher grade if you work harder. And then they will give you tutorial 3 or the third tutorial. So it's not a must, but all candidates on a CELTA course must receive the first tutorial and the second tutorial. The first tutorial sometimes can be just some notes written to you in your CELTA 5 documents. But tutorial 2 has to be notes written and face-to-face meeting. Wonderful. Now let's move to the first part. And here we are. And it says, write a paragraph in which you summarize your strengths in teaching and areas where you have made progress. Wonderful. So, the important part, strengths. Areas where you have made progress. What do we mean by that? Strengths like maybe you were strong at some areas in teaching from the very beginning. Or maybe you were weak at an area and then by the end of the course, this weak area has become a strength. Good for you. So in this paragraph, you will talk about this. So let's see how you would answer this part. And I'm going to give you now an example of how you write here. So let's read that part together. In the first tutorial, the main course tutor, Shadi Abu Yusuf, mentioned that my monitoring was consistently strong. The thing that the assistant course tutor agreed to as well in the second half of the course. Now look at what I did here. I said in the first tutorial, you have to be very, very specific in this assignment, my friend. Very specific. So you don't just say, my tutor told me that my monitoring was going. No, you have to say in the first tutorial. And then mention the name of the tutor who said that. So be specific. Because if you're not specific, it's a resubmission. Okay? Right. Now, another example. Let's read that part together. One of the things that I learned from my peers in my group was writing clear aims. My friend Selwa helped me so much with this by showing me many examples of how she wrote them in her plans. This made me able to write my aims clearly for TP4 and have this criterion as a strength in TP4 feedback sheet by my tutor Shadi. This criterion continued to be a strength in the second half of the course as Pauline, the assistant course tutor, mentioned this in her feedback sheets on TPs 7 and 8. Now, look at what I did. I mentioned the name of my friend on the course who helped me. And I mentioned the exact TP. And I talked about the TP, feedback sheet. And I said it's TP4 feedback sheet. And I said my tutor Shadi. And I mentioned Pauline. And I mentioned TPs 7 and 8. You have to be very specific when you're talking about your strength. And as you see, in the first one, I gave an example from a tutorial. In the second one, I gave an example from, an area that one of the course participants helped me with. Now a third example, this one. Throughout the first half of the course, I had a problem with pace. However, I managed to learn how to adjust it by listening to Shadi's comments in the first half of the course and watching how professional teachers did this in the video observation sessions. For example, in the video on speaking, Alice was able to follow an appropriate pace during the useful language stage and left herself 20 minutes for the speaking task. This helped me with my speaking lessons in the second half of the course, and Pauline wrote to me in the feedback sheet for TP6 that my pace had finally become a strength. So look at this. I'm talking about the video observation, and I'm mentioning what video exactly, and I'm mentioning the name of the teacher in the video, and I'm saying that Pauline wrote to me in the feedback sheet for TP6. So be specific when you are giving information in this assignment. Right, let's move to part B of the assignment, and it says, write a paragraph in which you summarize your weaknesses or areas you still need to work on. So, and someone might ask me, Shadi, what is the difference between a weakness and an area that I need to work on? A weakness is a weakness. It's something you're weak at, you're not good at. But an area you still need to work on doesn't have to be a weakness, but it still needs some improvement, right? And you know that. So, let's see. First, to answer, remember this. Don't mention strings from the previous section as a weakness, because that's a common mistake. It's crazy. You mention some strings in the previous part. Don't take this strings, and talk about it as a weakness now. That's a direct resubmission, my friend. Don't do it. Another point. Don't mention a weakness that is not a weakness in your portfolio. It's not mentioned by any of your tutors. It's not mentioned in tutorial 1 or tutorial 2. It's not there. Then don't mention it as a weakness, for God's sake. Make sure that your weaknesses come from comments from both parts of the course. Like, don't go to the first part of the course and keep giving us weaknesses, and these weaknesses are in TP1, TP2, TP3, TP4. Now, what about 5, 6, 7, and 8? Your assignment has to be balanced. So when you talk about strengths or you talk about weaknesses, you've got to cover both parts of the course. Someone might say, Shadi, but I didn't do TP7 and 8. How can I make this balance? Talk about comments from 5 and 6, for God's sake. But don't keep it, TP1, TP2, TP3, TP4, and leave 5 and 6. Okay, good. An example now. One of the areas I need to work on is checking my instructions. It appeared in my first and second tutorials, and my feedback sheet for TP8 by Shadi. My tutor said that I was unable to decide whether my ICQs were necessary or not. Okay, right. Now, part C. And what's in part C? Let's read the first one. Choose 3 of the most important, significant weaknesses. Someone might say, Shadi, how do I know that this weakness is significant? You will find it mentioned in tutorial 1 or tutorial 2. And then it is mentioned, for example, in tutorial 2, and of course we know that tutorial 2 happens after TP4. So when you look at TP5, 6, you see that this weakness is still a weakness also in these TPs, you know that this one is very, very important. Because usually CELTA tutors would prioritize the most significant weaknesses and put them in your tutorials. So that's the first place, okay, to look at. Right. And describe specific strategies, and look at specific, like don't tell me general stuff. Specific strategies you're going to use in order to continue your development in these areas. And when I say specific, I mean specific. I don't say, oh, I will work on my instructions. Because, my friend, that's not specific. Tell me what you will do. And they say, I will work on my instructions by taking or by attending some workshops. Yeah, exactly. What workshops, where, by who, and give full information. See what I mean? Right, good. And of course, we're talking about how to work on these areas after the course is finished. For each of the 3 weaknesses, so you need to prioritize 3 weaknesses. You need to think of 3 strategies which could be used to address these problems, and decide on a time framework, like tell us exactly when this will happen. Exactly. Okay? Right. Now, a common mistake here that some candidates in this section would come up with weaknesses that were not mentioned in section B. Now, never do this. The weaknesses you would prioritize in part C should have been mentioned in the previous part. You cannot come up with new stuff here. So let's imagine that you mentioned 5 weaknesses in part B. Then prioritize 3 out of these 5 and plan strategies from them in part C. Someone might say, Shadi, maybe there is another weakness that I didn't mention in part B and I want to mention it in part C. I said, no, don't do that. That will be a resubmission. Okay? So prioritize from the weaknesses you mentioned in part B. And if you feel that this other weakness that you want to talk about in part C is very important, then yeah, add it to part B then. Okay? Right. Another part. Consider strategies for broader professional development beyond simply your lesson planning and your classroom practice. Like think about the outer world. Think about reading. Think about ELT conferences. Think about webinars. Think about, workshops. Think about PD sessions at your school. Think about subscribing to a journal on the internet or an online library. You name it. Okay? Right. Such as industry bodies and journals, conferences, workshops, etc. Right. Last part. Parts A and B should be written in prose, paragraphs, while part C can be in table format with bullet points for the 3 strategies. Good news. So my friends, let me show you how you can answer this part in a good way. And answers. Oh, look at my sexy table here. Okay, look at this, my friends. And look at how I organized this. So, weaknesses, I put there, checking my instructions. And then I put access. How would I access this? And what I mean by access, if for example, I am going to attend a workshop in a conference. How would I access this conference? How do I get the permission? So things like that. So I said here, my workplace. Al-Alamiya school, for example. Right? So I am going to attend this or I'm going to do this through my own school. My own school will support me. Specific, be specific. I say, attend a PD session, a professional development session. Measurable. How can I measure that I achieved my aim here? I say, the session has a practical side where I give instructions to 5 tasks and receive feedback on them from peers. Wonderful. So that's very specific. Achievable. How can I achieve this? All teachers at my school have an access to the PD sessions. Relevant. Is it relevant to the weakness? The session focuses on instructions and ICQs with tasks from the course book used at the school. Wonderful. Timed. Look at what I said. A 3-hour session on the 1st of July 2022. Yay! Good one. And you need to submit 3 weaknesses here and follow the table I'm showing you here. Right? Lovely. So the table has weakness, access, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timed, and Bob's your uncle. Good. Now, a pass assignment shows candidates can note their own teaching strengths and weaknesses in different situations in light of feedback from learners, teachers, and tutors. Identify which ELT areas of knowledge and skills they need further development in. Describe in a specific way how they might develop their ELT knowledge and skills beyond the course, after the course. Use written language which is clear, accurate, and appropriate to the task. Now, in order to avoid a resubmission, now what are the things that might cause a resubmission? Not providing clear evidence when describing your strength and areas for development as a teacher. Outlining a strength and then saying that the same area is a priority for development. Does it make sense? Not referring to the necessary number of peers or experienced teachers or DVD teachers. You're not being specific here. The areas in the action plan don't relate to a sufficient number of areas for development outlined earlier in the assignment. The action plan lacks detail or is unrealistic, like you say, I'm going to finish this book in 1 day. I mean, come on, for God's sake. You're not talking to stupid people, so be realistic about your plans. Not providing a bibliography where appropriate, like if you mention some information based on a book or something, then you need to add this to your bibliography. Only referring to evidence from your first few TPs, like the whole assignment is based on TP 1, 2, 3, 4, and nothing is mentioned about TP 5 or 6. Okay, my friends. So I guess we came to the end of this episode of CELTA Insider. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to comment and share this video with everyone doing their CELTAs. I'll be down there in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Bye bye.